Good evening, everyone. I'm hopeful that everyone can hear and see us. My name is Kylie Overson. I am very honored to serve as chair of the DNC Rural Council. I am a former state party chair from North Dakota, a former state legislator from North Dakota, and very excited about the conversation we're having tonight. I'm going to keep my introduction really short because we are short on time tonight, so you might see people coming and going a little bit. We're really excited to introduce you to all of the candidates running for chair. And I'm honored to be joined by my partner, Andrew Lackman, who is chair of the Small Business Council as well tonight. And we will have one other member from the Small Business Council joining us. So Andrew, I'm just gonna give you that quick introduction here, and we will go ahead and move on to our candidates doing their opening statements. And first up, we have Dr. Quintessa Hathaway.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Quintessa Hathaway, and I seek to be the next DNC chair. I'm glad that we had an opportunity to come together tonight to discuss some of the most critical issues pertaining to rural America, as well as small businesses, and how we can trek forward as a party. Rural America is the heartland. It is a political force which ought not be ignored. It is far from monolithic or homogeneous. Rural America is complex and growing mix of social, economic, as well as its diversity. The fate of rural and urban America is interwoven. Therefore, the robustness of these regions is significant. This cross-section of America must be spoken to, spoken for, and agenda must be set. Rural America has the potential to lead this country to new economic heights. Our local, state, and federal governments must do more research and development, improve the efficiency of resources and their uses, and reduce the environmental impact of the rural sector. There are more main streets than there is a Wall Street. The working poor are suffering, the middle class is shrinking, and the pandemic exposed that small and medium-sized businesses are hurting. And hopefully over the course of tonight, we will speak to each of those interests.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Hathaway. Next up, we have Chairman Ken Martin.
Thank you, Kylie, and thank you, Andrew, and everyone else for pulling this forum together. I'm grateful to be with you. Look, I'm running for DNC chair because I can pull our party together and restore a democratic coalition that delivers for families. My mom had me, her first kid, when she was just a teenager, 15 years old. She was raising 4 kids by the time she was 20. A single parent, we faced really tough times in and out of shelters. Yet we were always, were and still are, a family that believes in the promise of America. I was the first in my family to get a college degree. Now, I didn't go to an Ivy League school. I went to a state school, the University of Kansas. I don't rub elbows with Hollywood elites. I rub elbows in labor halls and church basements. I understand that rural America and the business community are not monoliths. We can't reflexively assume that rural communities aren't our people. We can't reflexively assume that business is a bad word. And we can't reflexively assume that we're only talking about white people when we talk about competing in red states, winning back working class voters, or making our case to rural voters and small business voters. The future of our party is about uniting a multiracial, multi-generational coalition of working people in every state, every community, and every zip code, and standing up and fighting for them. That's why I created the 57-state party strategy, which has already started to lay down a long-term grassroots organizing network for Democrats to compete in every zip code throughout America. The great thing about our party is that we have a big tent. We listen to each other's expertises, their experiences, their stories, and then we find places where our values overlap. And that's how we build our coalition going forward, with a permanent campaign based on our shared values. Thank you so much. I look forward to the conversation tonight.
Thank you, Ken. And next up, we have Jason Paul.
Hello, my name is Jason Paul. Tonight, I am certain that all of my fellow candidates will speak passionately about the needs of rural America and promise to address them forcefully should they end up as DNC chair. They will also explain the ways that they have already helped and will relate their lives to those in rural America. They are an impressive group. However, this approach will not confront the scale of the challenge we face. Since 2008, Democrats have suffered nowhere more than in rural America. Close margins, sometimes even surprising wins across rural America, enabled the 2008 Obama victory. Enduring rural strength kept Romney from getting close. But since 2014, Democrats have been in nonstop freefall in rural areas. Look no further than Iowa. In 2008, Obama won a majority of Iowa's 99 counties. Fast forward to 2024, and Harris won just 5. This is nothing short of a catastrophe, with devastating effects up and down the ballot. It's not just wins and losses. Iowa saw 57 of its counties go for Trump by more than 2-1 in 2024. By contrast, in 2008, Obama only lost 3 Iowa counties by that margin. Once a county goes that far red, some voters won't even know one Democrat personally whom they like. Democrats become almost foreign. Strategies that worked when we were competitive no longer apply. None of us has a foolproof solution to a problem of this scale, but my starting point is placing a full-time paid local organizer on the ground in every county. In Iowa, that would mean roughly 110 organizers. Nationally, this will be a $1 billion party-wide annual commitment to leave nowhere behind. Once a county has seen $100,000 of annual commitment, the odds improve that more resources will follow. Our weakest counties will require additional strategies, but this is the needed down payment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Next up, we have Senator James Skoufis.
Thank you very much. And hi, everyone who's joined, and thanks to the Rural and Small Business Councils for hosting this important forum, one that I've been looking forward to since the invitation. Now, I know I'm not a household name to many folks who are watching. I'm not a state party chair. I'm not an operative. I am someone who knows how to win in places like my largely rural Trump plus 12 district, where we as National Democrats have stopped winning. I know how to coalition build for a living and speak with voters, not to voters, and not in overly academic, overly politically correct terms. I'm also the son of a small business owner. Both my mom, after retiring as a union postal worker, went on to own and operate a dance school, and also my dad, a Greek immigrant, owns and operates a Greek deli in Brooklyn. If we're being honest with ourselves, rural voters and small business owners are 2 of the most overlooked constituencies in our national party. Our national party has tended to concentrate canvases, resources, and attention on those urban and suburban communities where voters are concentrated. Likewise, if I had a nickel every time I've heard folks in either party's political class say small businesses are the backbone of our economy, I'd have more money than I know what to do with. Yet, most of those very small business owners that we articulate respect for do not feel that we have their backs. You don't have to trust me when I say I know how to win these voters or that we'll start showing up for them. You can just look at my record. We can be both pro-union and pro-small business. We can be supportive of rural voters' concerns without sacrificing our base voters in urban and inner suburban communities. I'm the candidate in this race that has gone out and won these voters cycle after cycle, and I'll make sure our national party starts doing it when I'm DNC chair. Thank you again, and look forward to the forum.
Thank you, Senator. Next up, we have Nate Snyder.
Thank you. Great to be here. Looking forward to the discussion. My name is Nate Snyder, and I believe our party needs leadership that truly understands small town America. Unlike others focusing on fundraising, shades of a status quo, or an amorphous existential threat, I am committed to addressing the real concerns of families and small businesses across America. I grew up in a household where we knew the value of hard work and perseverance. We experienced what it means to improvise when resources are tight, like using the oven for warmth or cutting coupons to save on groceries. But we also saw things improve through dedication. I understand hardship and I can relate to the struggles that families face, and I know what it takes to overcome those challenges. I believe our party needs leadership that's ready to fight for them. That fight starts with addressing the now, namely the exhaustion and the anger that we all feel. The DNC needs to invest in the progress that you've made. Despite minimal investments, and most importantly, the DNC needs to listen. Because you know what? What we see and think in the Beltway isn't reality. DC isn't going to solve the certification obstacles North Carolina is facing. Consultants aren't going to be the ones to bring Texas back into play. Overpriced forms won't be able to tell you how to engage county farmers or registered nurses. And no one, should tell you that rural America is too hard and too time consuming to organize. I know because with the help of leaders like you, I've done it. That's right. It's you that will lead the charge. It's the people on this call that know their communities and have generations of advocacy and organizing experience that will move us forward. That said, I believe we need to work together to build a generational plan to engage rural voters consistently, move away from over-reliance on major donors, and adopt modern grassroots organizing strategies that actually work for your communities. I look forward to the discussion. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you so much, Nate. Next up, we have Chairman Ben Wickler.
Thank you so much, Kylie, and thank you so much, Andrew, and the Rural and Small Business Councils. I'm Ben Wickler, chair of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, the dairy state. And it's a state where Democrats can only win if we organize in rural communities. And we recognize that small businesses are the most trusted institutions in America. And that's what we've done with our work. We've been able to build up year-round grassroots organizing in every part of rural Wisconsin, in parts of the state that I first experienced as a kid, interning on governor's races, going to county parades, throwing out candy, meeting folks where they are. When you connect with people who are not obsessed with politics, who are in communities that often feel overlooked by state governments and certainly by the national government, the first thing is to connect at the level of values. And we've worked with the Rural Voter Institute to train our county party chairs on rural message development so that we start with a conversation about shared values like hard work to be able to open the door to talking about the solutions and the things that Democrats deliver. When we start by listening and we start by connecting, that opens the door to building trust. And that can open the door to earning votes. And when we do that, then we can deliver in people's lives and they become the protagonists in our political story. In 2022, Governor Evers, our amazing Democratic governor, ran ads in every county with local voices showcasing what he had done in that county to actually deliver. And when people can feel cynical and disconnected from politics, seeing the small business that the governor was able to support with pandemic funds made all the difference in making politics real. We know that rural communities are extraordinarily diverse. There is no one rural America across every dimension of identity. And so my goal as DNC chair is to build a strategy in each state that reflects the unique populations and unique challenges and unique opportunities in that state. Everywhere in this country, that has to start with recognizing that no matter your zip code, no matter how far you have to drive to reach a grocery store or reach a clinic, your voice matters and your life matters. And so we're going to work to build up a party that can fight and organize and win power and deliver change in every corner of this nation. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ben. And next up, we have Marianne Williamson.
Thank you so much. You know, every Democrat is very aware that Donald Trump lies. And the only way that we're going to beat him is with big truths. But we have to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. We have to be raw and we have to be authentic. And the authentic truth is that huge corporate interests are eating our country alive. They hold our government hostage. And two sectors of this country that know all about the destructiveness of huge corporate conglomerates when they express no soulfulness are rural America and small business. I was in a small town in South Carolina once, and the mayor of that town took me around one day. And he was telling me about what life was like there before the 1980s. And he said that small farmers knew they're a small banker. And a small farmer would go into the small banker and say, "I'm so sorry, we didn't have a good year this year." The small banker knew the small farmer, and he said, "We understand. It'll be better next year. You'll pay us next year." And then trickle-down economics began. Big banks ate up those little banks. The big banker didn't know the small farmer. And so when the small farmer went to tell the banker, "We didn't do good this year," the big banker would say, "Well, I guess you'll have to sell off." And that was when the destructiveness of that matrix, big food, big ag, and big chemical companies began their destructive plague on rural America, on farming, on how we produced food, on pushing aside some of the ancient rules of harmony with nature, any kind of organic, any kind of regenerative, and began to ruin land. But it was not only the ruination of land, it was not only the ruination of food, it was the ruination of lives, it was the ruination of communities. Too often, these big interests actually see rural America as nothing more than a profit center. It's where their servant class lives. And this same mayor told me that before that time, the government used to give loans that were partnered with grants. Now, not only rural America, but also small business knows how often big businesses see small businesses as just an inconvenience. 46% of the jobs in this country come from small businesses, and yet big businesses, wherever possible, will gobble them up. The Democratic Party must make it clear we stand for the working people of the United States, even if it means pushing back against huge corporate conglomerates, which would plague them where they live. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marianne. I'm going to turn it over to Andrew for our first question.
Absolutely. And just from earlier, my name is Andrew Lackman. I am the chair of the DNC Small Business Small Business Council. Been around since 2012. We have 14 caucuses throughout the country, which makes sure that small business is not only reached out to, but takes part and is at the table as a key part of the Democratic coalitions. So speaking of being a key part of our coalitions, I would like to, first of all, open by talking a little bit about diverse contracting and asking a question. Diverse contracting is important. It's a great way. It's a way that we make sure that where we spend our money reflects our values. But at the same time, more recently, these relationships at the moment seem to be the same group over decades, with little innovation outside of the technology we use. Our models are still based on the approach we built in 2008. What is your record and commitment to expanding diverse contracting and finding ways as well to embrace new consultants with new ideas other than technology, of course, which we've done pretty well?
Thanks, Andrew. We'll turn it to Jason first.
So basically, I would say that when we think about this party, we have to think about the opportunities that spending money presents us as a means of making people more comfortable with us, liking us more, and being out in the community more. So when it comes to sort of spending the DNC dollar, I would want to put it in as many hands as I possibly could justify, because if someone has a business relationship with you and you treat them well, they're going to like you better than if you don't have a business relationship with them, or if you have a business relationship with them and you don't treat them well. And I think that when you think about our overall spend at being overwhelmingly on television, probably in the 70% range of all of our spending on television, that goes primarily to a small number of broadcast television studios. And then, as you mentioned, big tech companies. If it really grabs people's attention and works and helps us win, then great. But I don't think it did in this last cycle. And because I don't think it did in this last cycle, I think that we missed out on the opportunity to have more people who are benefiting from the Democratic Party just with our dollars. We're spending, $10 billion. You can make a lot of friends spending $10 billion, and they can do a lot of interesting things. So I have no connection to anyone who expects or wants a DNC contract. And so since I have no connection to anyone who expects or wants a DNC contract, they shouldn't expect to be getting a DNC contract from me.
Thank you, Jason. Next up, we'll turn to Nate.
All right, thanks. Good question. I think I just want to start out saying that, this issue with contracting consultants is a symptom of a bigger issue here. You're going to hear a lot of anger pointed towards sort of the consultant class. And so I want to address that directly. Yes, there is that level of frustration, but where this is really coming from is with the power brokers. And so as Jason mentioned, yes, I am ready to pick those fights, ready to have those audits, and really look at the usefulness of the current contracts that are already out there. However, I want to completely reform the procurement strategy of the DNC. I want to look more at shared services. I want to use the DNC's bargaining power to negotiate new contracts that don't benefit DC, that benefit the states, and especially rural America when it comes to some of the things. We need rural consultants to advise and help with things that rural parties can't do at the moment. However, the one issue here is making sure that we build sustainable staffing. A lot of the times that we are over-reliant on consultants is because two things. One, we don't have a sustainable mission for staff and therefore have to contract out. And then also there's bargaining unit issues too, to where, quite frankly, those who go to consultants are looking to circumvent the bargaining unit, and that just can't stand within the DNC period. So I think we need to unlock our imagination. We need to use the DNC as a way to leverage consultants to make sure that they're helping the folks out in the field. And it'll require a full audit that I'm willing to lead.
Great. Thank you, Nate. We will turn next to Marianne.
Strategy companies, SKDK Knickerbocker, Precision Strategies, Waterfront Strategies. What we do is we say that we're all for diversification, and we say we're all for small business, and we say we're all for giving people more and more opportunity. But the truth of the matter is four companies actually own these contracts. What we should first do is diversify geographically. These contracts should be given in these local communities where we are actually doing business. And they should reflect our values of diversification, and they should reflect the way we see the diversification of the country and the different people in the different sectors who deserve the business. How can we say we stand for small business, and yet we ourselves are doing what we do to make it so difficult in our own business, in our DNC, to make it so that these four companies in cahoots with a few people are the ones making all the decisions and getting all the contracts, even working for the DNC, even as at-large members. These kinds of things have to stop. Otherwise, we will continue to be seen as the hypocrites that so often we are. So much of the work that we need to be doing in this country should begin with a reorganization and a real shift in the way the culture of the DNC operates. And until we do that, people will be able to smell the fact that we say one thing and too often we do another.
Thank you, Marianne. We'll go next to Senator Skoufis.
Thanks very much. And let's be clear right off the bat, it's a lot more than just four companies. This is a pervasive problem within the DNC. And let me be clear about one other aspect of this conversation, and that is there are only two candidates in this race who have from the very beginning been beating this drum. As they say, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. I'm thrilled to see all of these other candidates now adopting what I and Ken Martin have been talking about since literally November. Yes, there are DNC members who double the biggest conflict of interest imaginable within the organization, who double as individuals who do business with the very DNC that they are members of. On day one, that practice will end. And yes, there are way too many vendor contracts who are friends of a friend of a congressman or otherwise well connected within the organization. And forget about doing an audit. An audit is sort of the easy way out of this conversation. We don't need to do an audit. We need to competitively rebid these contracts, because as chair, if you want to do business with the Democratic Party, you will earn that business honestly and by demonstrating value. We don't have to audit. If you're doing it right, then fantastic, you'll win the competitive bid. If you're not doing it right, you're not going to win the competitive bid. And so we don't have to go through a months-long, intensive, expensive audit. That is the easy way out from addressing this pervasive problem. And so no more order renewals. Let's get the right folks in who only care about one thing, providing value so that we can get back to winning again.
Thank you, Senator. Next up, Ben Wickler.
Thanks so much. And this to me involves looking at our track records of what we've actually done when we've had the power to make sure that we're spending money in ways that align with our values and the path to victory. In Wisconsin, since I've been chair, we've dramatically expanded the diversity of our contracting, starting by actually looking at tracking where our money goes. That's meant that we've worked more with firms led and owned by folks in the Hmong community, the Black community, the Latino community, the Native American community, women-led businesses, always keeping in mind our commitment to working with union vendors wherever possible. This includes constituency media and media more broadly. It includes things like polling and research. It includes services like food and AV services, the venue for our state party convention, the Potawatomi Casino Hotel, And it also means building the pipeline for these services so that very small businesses can become bigger businesses, so that people who want to become folks who work in the political field get mentorship and support and connection through our state party. That's what we've done in Wisconsin. We've put our money where our values are, and that has helped us to be able to win because we're working with people who know how to communicate authentically and bring the voices of our full coalition. And I should say this also very much involves across race and ethnicity work in rural Wisconsin to ensure that our work connects with folks in the way that is most authentic and present in their lives. At the DNC, we need the same approach. I come in with zero commitments to any vendor and only a commitment to ensuring we're working with union folks and working with folks that represent our full coalition to represent our values and the path to victory. That's an ironclad promise, and we're going to keep it.
Thank you, Ben. Next up is Ken Martin.
Thank you so much, Kylie. And let me just start by saying, because I'm, along with Nate Snyder, I believe we're the only two card-carrying union members here. And I would say that we shouldn't use union vendors sometimes. We should use union vendors always. There's no excuse for not using a union vendor. And let me just say, as it relates to contracts, we have to make sure that we get rid of the DC consultants that aren't providing value, as Senator Scufa said. I agree with everything he said, as well as a few others who mentioned the fact that we need to make sure that what we're doing in terms of our contracting not only reflects our values, but gets us on a path back to winning again. The reality is we have too many DC consultants who continue to make millions of dollars off the backs of our campaigns, off the backs of our political party, trading in outdated practices and tactics, doing nothing to help us win. As I've said before, I'm interested in winning the U.S. House back, not building a consultant a new house. We've got to get rid of the folks who continue to trade in bad practices. Two, we need to give opportunities to smaller shops, to folks who come from vendors and others who actually are small businesses. The reality is most of these contracts go to huge consulting firms that really, again, not just their tactics that are outdated, but they don't really reflect our values. Third, I really agree with what Nate Snyder said about using our bulk purchasing power on procurement in terms of contracts. We could use the bulk purchasing power of the state parties and the DNC to negotiate from everything from healthcare to computers to printing to you name it, right? Nate's absolutely right on that. Shoot. That's it. Sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Next up is Dr. Hathaway.
I'm a small business owner myself. I own an education and business consultancy, which has been in operation coming this July of 9 years. Taking that experience into account, I'm also a registered vendor in various school districts as well as states across this nation. When it comes to the procurement process, I truly believe that more contracts have to be awarded to women as well as small businesses. I believe that the Democratic Party must drive down the direction of awarding at least 30% of all contracts to women as well as minorities in this country. Simply because, we turned this word diversity, equity, and inclusion on the opposition side into a dirty word. I think that we need to take the reins back, take back the messaging, and show that diversity, equity, inclusion, access, and belonging is our strength as a country. Secondly, when it comes to how we actually craft the RFPs, request for proposals, the RFI, request for inquiry, the way in which we write those things determine what our intended outcomes shall be. We must do a better job of bringing in vendors, bringing in contractors that reflect the communities in which they are situated, as well as be willing to go out to grow our party.
Thank you, Dr. Hathaway. Sorry, it added a little music with the timer there. I don't see, for those that missed it, Governor O'Malley will be joining us later. He should be here any minute now. He's not here, so he'll miss that first question. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our second question. So I'll pass it back to you, Andrew.
Thank you. And for those of you who want to thank the Academy, with that music, you can do so at the end. Just be sure to thank the craft catering along the way. All right. So our next question that we have here. So for those of you who have been involved within the party in one way or another, can you talk and give an example of how you've helped elevate or empower a council or a caucus in your state?
First up, Senator Skoufis.
Sure. Thank you very much. Look, locally, about half of the county in which I serve in is very rural and deep red. And there are a whole host of Democratic committees in small towns. There are a whole host of individuals who oftentimes feel overlooked, forgotten by the more suburban and exurban and the couple of urban centers of Orange County in the Hudson Valley, amongst the broader Democratic committee in the county. And look, as someone who represents about 90% of this county, my district is large, over 300,000 people. I have given tremendous voice and elevated and empowered those folks within our party locally that, quite frankly, haven't had a seat at the table in the party's decision-making in years, if not decades. Because I show up in these communities, I see how hard they work, and not only amongst the average voters, but the Democratic committees in these towns can sometimes consist of literally a half a dozen active members, 10 active members. I show up to their meetings and they tell me, we've never seen an elected official, a Democrat, show up to one of our Democratic committee meetings and spend time with the 6 of us, the 10 of us. I bring their message back to the county party. In fact, the county committee chairman where I am, Zach Constantine, who's helping with my campaign in this race, he's the youngest state county chair rather in New York State, another voice that I've helped elevate that otherwise wouldn't have a seat at the table. And so certainly there are plenty of examples in the state legislature that I can point to, but this is obviously a party race, and I wanted to bring this back home to our Democratic committee in Orange County, New York.
Okay, thank you, James. Dr. Hathaway.
I've always been an advocate for people, for communities. But here over the last approximately 3 or 4 years, I have been intentionally about the business of putting on my civil rights activist hat. My phone rings when there is a crisis, when situations happen. People entrust that I'm going to organize those within that community, reach out to the religious and social activists, various groups that are part of the Democratic Party and not a part of the Democratic Party, those that have a myriad of views, whether they're moderate, centrist, liberal, conservative, and a broad spectrum of people. When I tell you all that more has to be done on the behalf of the party to support and align ourselves with the activist organization piece within this country, those individuals, whether it's on the voting rights or on the civil rights side, we must get back to supporting, sustaining, and recognizing that they too are a part of the backbone of this party. I think that we have deviated in such a serious way that we are sometimes afraid to even step into those murky waters. We have to get uncomfortable as a party and also see that 94% of African-American women that voted in the 2024 election voted for the vice president. 80% of African-American males voted for the vice president in this last election. That is a very valuable constituency, a dedicated constituency of the Democratic Party.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hathaway. Next up, we have Ken Martin.
Can you repeat the question, Kylie? I'm sorry.
Yep. Andrew. Oh, Andrew, you're on mute here. I
muted myself. Yeah, let me bring back the question again. So, if you've been involved with party or sharing a specific example of how you've helped to elevate or empower a council or caucus in your state.
Well, we have many caucuses in Minnesota, and one of them, of course, the Rural Caucus, which is one of our strongest and largest caucuses, now led by Teresa Kevney. And just most recently, I helped fund a training for the caucus at the state convention with Ruby, which is a rural urban bridge initiative. Many of you know Anthony Flacavato. We brought him out to address. It was one of our largest panels at our state convention, and so we work very closely with all of our caucuses in Minnesota. Not just a rural caucus, but also a Small Business Minnesota, which is our small business caucus that we've worked with for years. The reality is the job of a state party leader is no different than the job of the next DNC chair, which is to make sure that we're partnering with our caucuses and councils to give them the resources they need to put on trainings and to also bring speakers in and to support the work that they're doing to do meaningful outreach to those communities that they serve. And so that's what we've done in Minnesota. We have over 20 established caucuses with our party. They're all flourishing and they're all supported by the state party in different ways. And so I'm proud of that work. And again, my commitment to all of you is when I'm the next DNC chair, we're going to support our caucuses and councils like they've never been supported before so they can do the work of outreach to their communities.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Next up is Nate.
All right. Well, I think it's a good premise to the question. I have been supporting the Democratic Party for over 25 years, whether it's serving at Homeland Security under the Biden administration, the Obama administration, or as an organizer in the field or a union organizer with SEIU. But I guess this really applies to 2002. I had the opportunity to serve as an organizer, a really important role to work with county parties in South Dakota for Tim Johnson's Senate reelection campaign. We won that race by 524 votes. And so I was working with county parties in Davison, in Aurora, in Charles Mix, in Douglas County, and in Brule. And as an organizer, I made sure that their voices were heard by the coordinated campaign, by the direct campaign of Senator Tim Johnson, making sure that they were getting the resources they need, but also looking at the sole fact that I was a Northeast kid from Delaware who went into foreign territory to me. And I allowed them to empower me and I empowered them, learning how to organize, learning from them, empowering their constituencies, their volunteers, their networks, and making sure that they were fighting on the front lines. And I was enabling them to do that. So I think that needs to happen at the DNC that much more, to work with folks, to work with the caucuses, work with county chairs, and make sure that they're in the leadership, making sure that they are leading the charge and that we are respecting them, we're listening, and we're providing resources, because right now it's going to be all hands on deck. Rural America is sadly a place that's been neglected by the party and something we need to invest in even further. And that's going to start with empowerment.
Great. Thank you, Nate. Next up is Ben Wickler.
Thanks. This takes me back, this question, to when I was running for state party chair in 2019. My first thing was going to Plover, Wisconsin for a meeting with a whole bunch of rural county party chairs, and then an ice storm hit, and I managed to get out just before the power shut down. It was a one of those moments you don't forget, but it helped to form my thinking about how we work as a party, which is to actually hear folks and show up for addressing the issues that they have. And what we've heard from our rural caucus in Wisconsin is that the party wasn't taking the challenges of rural messaging seriously or signage. And the number of people who told me they never wanted to hear the phrase "signs don't vote," I don't have enough fingers and toes to tell you how many people told me how much they hated that every day. So we hired full-time staff in our party affairs team and in a coalitions team that works to staff and support our caucuses at our state party. We built a statewide rural, everywhere, signage distribution network with hubs that receive pallets of signs that we pay for and print and send out to those hubs, and then they go out to county parties. We survey them regularly to figure out how many do they have, how many do they need, how fast are they going out the door, so we can make additional print runs and replenish those supplies. And we know that those signs are often the beginnings of conversations on the sides of highways, on farms, and in small towns. They create an opportunity both to convey an endorsement and to start a conversation about the fact that there are Democrats everywhere. There are Democrats everywhere in rural Wisconsin, and they in Wisconsin are proud to be Democrats. That's how we've held our margins tighter than all of our neighboring states, and that's what the DNC should be working with states across the country to do.
Great. Thank you, Ben. Next up, Jason.
So I was a young Dem for 21 years till 3 years ago. I sadly aged out. I was national high school liaison in the Young Dems. When I was working with state parties, I was always pushing them to make sure that young people were a priority. At my local party, I've said, okay, we're in Newton, Massachusetts. We're pretty much always going to win. How can we help somewhere outside of ourselves? And I connected us with Lewiston, Maine, which was a place where we sometimes we win and sometimes we didn't, and they needed resources. And so I helped to fund their raise to get them resources. So I understand what the party is about. But I hear all these talk about consultants in this race. And to me, the real question is, where do you want to spend money and what do you want to spend money on? Because when you talk about consultants as being valueless, we need to make television ads. We write mail, we do digital ads. Sometimes we do field stuff with the consultants. If we shouldn't do those things, you should say so. If you think there are people who are better to do those things, you should also say so. But if it's just this idea that there's an amorphous group of people who are just leeches, we pay them to do stuff. I don't think we're paying anyone to do nothing. Do some of them do a better job than others? Do we need to figure out what that is? Yes, we do. But it is not the case that just there's this class of people who don't do anything and get paid. And having that attitude makes it very difficult for us to get the kinds of reform in how we spend that money and get me the organizers I want that we can do.
Thank you, Jason. Next up, Marianne.
Win elections. We want to win elections, and we will do that when people are feeling it about the Democratic Party again. You know, there's a lot of talk about how we're going to reach out to communities. Everybody's talking about reaching out. My power of reaching out is because for 40 years, I have known how to reach in. In the late 1980s, I started an organization called Project Angel Food to deliver meals to homebound people with AIDS. This organization has now served 18 million meals. Later, I was a non-denominational minister at a church in Warren, Michigan. Most of the people there, 3,500 people, came every Sunday. Most of the people were at least indirectly attached to the automobile industry. I saw grown men, big guys, sit in my office day after day, tears streaming down their cheeks, because when they lost their job, it was more than just a financial crisis. It was a psychological and emotional crisis. My kids won't respect me, how they couldn't stand the fact that they're having to live on their wife's salary. I have been with the sufferers. The Democratic Party comes across like it's somewhere up here. And even with all this data, yes, we're drowning in data, but people are drowning in despair out there. They're drowning in economic despair. They're drowning in psychological despair. They're drowning in physical, biological despair because of lack of health care. They don't know what to do with their lives. They don't have economic opportunities or educational opportunities. And what they will get from me, in partnership with all of the activism and organizing that we will do, is the presence of someone who knows how to lead a communication system where every day people will feel cared for, they will feel loved, and they will know that we have their back. We're doing everything we can every day.
Thank you, Marianne.
Thank you.
Next up, I want to welcome Governor Martin O'Malley, who has joined us. And Governor O'Malley, I'm hoping you heard the question. If not, we'll repeat it. We'll also give you a little bit of time here to do a brief introduction since we missed you at the beginning. We'll let you take yourself off mute there. See if we can get it.
I got it. Yeah, sorry about that. I was with the lieutenant governors of America that are Democrats. So thank you for allowing me to be in this forum. Do I get to answer this question too? Yes?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. Here's by way of opening. My name's Martin O'Malley. I'm the former governor of Maryland. And I'm running for chair of the DNC because the speed with which we make this party battle ready and restore trust among our activists, our volunteers, our would-be candidates, are the people that we need to donate to the party is going to determine whether we have a republic on the far side of these Trump 4 years or not. I believe we have an enormous opportunity if we move fast, if we move quickly, to turn our party around, restore our rightful claim to being the party that fights for the hardest working people in our economy and is committed to the notion of economic security, health, and well-being for all. That's who we are. as a party. Let me answer this question. And as I do, I am in 2011. I started, and I believe Yvette Lewis was my chair at the time, the diversity caucuses in the state party, Andrew, of Maryland. It was AAPI, Latino, LGBT. I don't think we had a disability. Veterans for sure. Young Democrats, and of course, African American. So that's what I've done, Andrew, in the past. I truly believe that our diversity is our strength. And when I'm chair, if I'm fortunate enough to earn your support to be your DNC chair, I will make sure we execute, that we listen, and that we empower our caucuses to a much greater degree than we have in the past, and also our councils. So thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Governor. And I'm going to call up Andrew again as we get ready for our next question.
Thank you. I'm going to have to hop off. I'm also the Western States Caucus chair. So I have to jump off to run the Western States Caucus Executive Board meeting. And we're looking forward to seeing all of you. I believe it is on the 23rd for the Western States one. Which I understand may be a little bit longer, but I did want to introduce Mark Gordon, who is our Southwest Region Director, DNC member from Arizona, who will be asking our last question from small business, and as we start to shift more to rural issues as well. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, everyone, and thank you, all you candidates who I've spoken with most of you for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Hello again, Mark.
The Biden administration and Democrats generally have done a lot to help small businesses. We've helped enact a number of legislation. We've pushed it. This has helped people and small businesses, given access to capital, prevented unfair business practices by large competitors, and yet our messaging is not getting through. What do we need to do differently to have our messaging and our successes and our work resonate with voters and with people? And Kylie, you can tell me who we begin with.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. First up is Chairman Ben Wickler.
Thank you so much. And I think this point is critical. The most powerful communicators about small businesses are small business leaders. And that means that as a Democratic Party, we need not just at the DNC with the Small Business Council, but to support state parties in making sure that they and elected officials are building relationships with small business leaders, are recruiting and supporting candidates who are themselves small business leaders, who are ensuring that small business leaders are not just in the ads that we run, but also in the press conferences that we hold as validators in their communities, speaking to groups of folks to build the kind of textured relationships that deliver trust, which is the basis for solidarity and political action. In Wisconsin, we just swept the competitive state Senate seats. We flipped 4 state Senate seats and 10 state assembly seats in this last election, the biggest Democratic state legislative pickup in the country, while our neighboring states were losing Democratic state legislative seats. And so many of those winning state legislative candidates were small business owners. It's working people, often union members and union leaders, and small business owners who so often are able to win and overperform in areas where Trump and Republicans are winning their elections. And I think of Jody Habush-Sinekin, who's a small business owner and a tremendous advocate who won in Ozaukee County, which used to be the reddest county in the state of Wisconsin, but where, thanks in part to her candidacy for state Senate in this election, we were able to actually add vote share in the presidential race. The work that we've done with press conferences all over the state, with constantly showcasing small business leaders and how Democrats partner with them and in fact are them, has been essential to our work to shift Wisconsin relative to the national vote by 4.5 percentage points, even while other states were moving to the right. And in this coming 4 years as the DNC, we need a commitment to ensuring that the voices of small business leaders and the voices of working people are constantly heard through our messaging, because those are voices that Americans trust, relate to, and connect with. When people see that we are fighting on behalf of regular folks are going to know the Democrats are the party for them.
Thank you, Ben. Next up is Marianne.
The Republicans brag about themselves all the time. We need to also. Republicans talk about what they're doing all the time. They tell their story. We need to also. Now, you and I know they don't walk their talk, but we don't talk our walk. If I'm chairman of the DNC, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have a communications network, and every single day, as many Americans as possible are going to be aware, and we're going to use all kinds of ways to make sure they are. This is what the Democrats did today to help you. This is what they did in the House. This is what they did in the Senate. This is what they did in your state capitol. By the way, we're also going to tell you what the Republicans did to screw you, and we're going to tell you what the Democrats did to help you every single day. And we're going to explain every single day the cohesion of our story, because we are the unequivocal advocates for the working people. And we're going to get people so excited about it that we're all also going to say, you know what, you can actually help, because you could help on the level of the school board, or you could help on the level of the city council. You could help on the level of your state government. We're going to make like politics sexy. We're going to make it fun. We're going to make women feel like the hot date on Thursday night is to go to the city council meeting. We're going to involve people, bring people into the political process, and make them very, very excited about what we are doing. We ask people for money every 2 years. We ask them for their votes, and then we go into our wood-paneled rooms and expect them to just assume we're doing the right thing. That needs to end. And the DNC, as the megaphone, which is making all this happen, will be the way that we get across to people every single day. This is what we're doing. This is why it is significant and practical in your everyday life. It will make them want to vote for us in 2 years.
Thank you, Marianne. Next up, James.
Look, I've championed increasing the minimum wage over the years. I've championed paid family leave over the years. I've championed expanding disability pay and benefits here in New York State. And yet, I'm one of the only Democrats in the state legislature who has built the trust and the respect, and in many of my elections, the support of groups like Chambers of Commerce's and the National Federation of Independent Businesses, which represents small businesses in particular. And part of the rationale here, the building of that trust and support, is we need to do better. And I certainly focus on connecting the dots a lot better than our National Democratic Party does. And what do I mean by that? We all know that we are the party that works to hold big insurance and big banks accountable, at least certainly far better than the other guys do. But we should be connecting the fact that big insurance companies, after catastrophic flooding events that ravage our small businesses and main streets, they deny flood claims for our small businesses based on technicalities and loopholes in state statutes and policies. When we're talking about banks, we should be talking about how during those PPP loans, during the pandemic, the big banks weren't doing business with small businesses. They were focusing on and doing business with huge corporations, leaving the small guys on Main Street in the dust. And so we've got to do a lot better of a job as National Democrats messaging. Yes, these are the bad guys, but this is why they're bad for you. And we're standing up to them for you. And that's certainly something the next DNC chair has to do as well.
Thank you, James. Next up, Jason.
So I think this is the absolute most important question of this entire election. If we do not succeed at communicating a message, nothing that we do in terms of policy will ever matter. And to me, the way that we have to be delivering that message is through actually having more people on the ground spreading that message. It's why I want my 10,000 organizers. It's why I ultimately want my 10,000 organizers to have 1 million people talking to their neighbors. And when it comes to small businesses, I want them to be involved at the table. I want them to be all the things that Ben Wickler said, but I also want us to be excellent customers for them. If the Democratic Party can be in the business of shopping at small business and having small businesses, do the sorts of community outreach, feeding us at our events, doing all of the things that we want to do in community, we can be excellent customers to small business, and people tend to at least listen to their customers a little. And if we get to a place where we're actually talking to people at a human level, then we can break through, then all the things that are good can happen. I think one of the major problems for Democrats and small business owners is that a lot of times Democrats seem like regulation and red tape. And they want to be able to run their business the way they see fit. Sometimes that red tape is, the right for workers, and we can't let on that. But sometimes that red tape is stuff that we passed a long time ago. We don't even know why we need it anymore. So that's a small business piece, but really it's people, people, people.
Thank you, Jason. Next up, Martin O'Malley. Oh, Governor, pause 1 second.
We have to do that every time? Is that the thing here?
Yes, that's the only way it's working
Okay.
for us with Zoom.
Apologize, I was late to class. As I was listening to everybody offering their take on this, I was remembering going out, after 2016, after being a surrogate for Hillary Clinton in 30 states, I created a leadership pack, super annoyed my friends by asking them for money to allow me to travel around the country, and the name of the pack was Win Back Your State. And some of the best candidates I met who were instrumental in flipping 17 legislative chambers in that first midterm when Donald Trump was in, were people that were small business owners. Some of them were real estate agents. Some of them owned a restaurant in town, but they were awesome candidates. And while party infrastructure is so important, the work that all of you do to keep the party going, a party also has to be re-energized every election by candidates, people willing to put themselves out there. There's a guy on the call, a friend of mine, John Dixon from Cecil County, and John remembers when I was running for governor, the phrase we found that works, and I think we have much better ability to test, by the way, phrases that work and arguments that work than we did when I was running for governor. But I wish I had a dime for every time I said expanding opportunity by strengthening our family-owned businesses and farms. We didn't have many farms in the city of Baltimore, but I said that everywhere. And I do think we sell ourselves short a bit, and I think we need to dial up that term family-owned businesses.
Great. Thank you, Governor. Next up, Nate.
Would you mind, could you repeat the question?
Sure. Briefly, looking at the Biden-Harris administration and local Democrats have done more for rural communities and small businesses than any administration in decades. But this message doesn't often reach voters that we need to in rural and small areas. As chair, what would you do differently than what has been done in the past to present the Democratic Party and our candidates as a viable option?
Thank you for the refresher there. I think it goes to two things, authenticity, accountability, and actually three things, and innovation. So when it comes to authenticity and accountability, too many times, as a union organizer, when I was organizing small towns, I was told by local electeds, Democrats, that, hey, kid, it's nice that you're trying to help workers form a union, but come back to us when the vote's over and then we'll get involved. If you're going to be for working families and if you're going to be for small business, you need to show up when the fight is hot. And there needs to be a level of accountability. Also, when it comes to innovation, I think, not surprisingly, a lot of these non-traditional platforms that we've all heard about, you know who has them and who is driving them? Small businesses, rural communities. And we need to cultivate those relationships in order to build a network to get our messaging out. One thing I want to say about rural America too is, yes, out of necessity, just because of commerce and everything, some communities in rural America are the most connected that you'll find, just out of necessity. We need to take advantage of that. And then thirdly on this, and this is huge, there is a native user and native demographic that knows how to navigate this space. That is youth leadership. We need to elevate youth at leadership levels to make sure that they can help us as the party and as the DNC make these moves, because I don't think anybody here, including myself, knows these platforms as well as they do. We trust them when it comes to national security. I trust those briefers to tell me about that terrain when I'm getting briefed with the Secretary of Homeland Security. And they are all under 30 years old. So if we can trust them there, then we can trust them within the Democratic Party.
Thank you, Nate. Next up, Ken Martin.
Thank you so much. Look, the business that Republicans speak about is the business of billionaires, multinational corporations, and extreme wealth and enrichment. And the policy ideas they pursue are things like corporate welfare, get out of jail free cards for polluters, and destroying watchdogs like the CFPB and the NLRB so that giant companies can face no repercussions for ripping people off or taking advantage of employees. Look, 99.9% of businesses in the US are small businesses. They make up half of our nation's workforce and just under 45% of American GDP. Innovation starts with entrepreneurship, and the American dream starts with small business. We understand that in Minnesota, a place that is fifth in the nation for business, third in the nation for raising a family, and first in the nation for health. Now, look, coming in second or losing by less does not allow you to pass legislation to make a difference. Under Democratic leadership that I helped elect and with slim majorities that I helped secure, Minnesota has passed historic public policy investments that create a thoughtful economic ecosystem for both employees and employers. We passed laws like a minimum wage indexed to inflation, paid family and sick leave, reproductive rights, affordable housing, middle class and small business tax relief, lowering the cost of prescription drugs, lowering child care costs, largest child tax credit in the nation, free school lunches, all-day kindergarten. This is how we should guide our national agenda forward for the business community. And guess what? You have to win elections to deliver on that. And that's what I will do again, winning elections.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you. Next up is Quintessa Hathaway.
As a small business owner, I see over and over again as I assist my clients that are in the developmental stages of their companies, there's a heavy reliance upon their personal credit in order to grow, advance, or maintain their business credit. I think that divide is what's keeping people from being able to access capital as well as be able to use it for working capital purposes, as well as for the expansion of their business, as well as to be able to scale up and have greater access to human capital. That's one. We can give greater attentionality to the Biden and Harris administration here over the last 4 years for all that they have done. But at the exact same time, more has to be done to increase access to the free market economy for minorities, small businesses, members of the LGBTQ community, as well as how they go about obtaining those certifications to open up doors of opportunity for them in local, state, and federal government contracts. Also, one thing that I believe has not been spoken about is the fact that as we go out into rural America, primarily where white Republican territory is ingrained, we must also be on the defense and be prepared for them to come into urban America and take our votes away and continue the gerrymandering of our urban centers. That has not been said in any form that I've heard thus far.
Thank you, Dr. Hathaway. For our next question, and candidates won't really appreciate this, but we're going to limit answers to just
one more comment. I have to jump off and attend another forum.
Okay, no problem. Thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much. You all have a good night.
Thank you. For the next question, while really important, I'm going to limit answers to 1 minute. We'll do our best so that we can hopefully get through our last questions here. One of the concerns our council and activists on the ground repeatedly discuss is the lack of retention for organizing and political staff at the DNC. If we have staff, often for some of our smaller caucuses and councils, they're shared amongst caucuses and councils, or we don't get staff until late in the cycle and they're trying to rebuild a program from scratch. For small business, rural, and others, we often try to find organic partnerships outside of the DNC to help build up our organizing partnership. Can you share your plans as if you were chair and your commitment for staffing at the DNC, especially as it relates to empowering rural and small business organizing and outreach on a year-round basis? And first up is Chairman Ken Martin.
Yeah, I mean, it's real simple. We just need to make sure that our caucuses and councils have dedicated staff and that they're working together, not just with our caucuses and councils for the DNC, but with caucuses and councils throughout the country, as well as organizations, allied organizations doing this work day in, day out in our states throughout the country. It's really that simple. And so, you know, it's a resource question for sure, but we haven't done it very well at the DNC. To your point, it's come and gone. Sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't. We need some consistency there. We need to make sure that you guys have the resources and tools to do the work that we ask you to do.
That was even faster. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Next up, Nate Snyder.
I think this is a pretty big issue when it comes to rural America. Too many times you'll have young people, you'll see a theme with me, youth, youth, youth. But yes, you'll have young people come in as organizers, build some really great infrastructure, develop wonderful relationships, and innovate at the ground level. And then yet what happens? You know, the field office will close, the funding will dry up, and what happens? You suffer from brain drain. You have leaders who then leave their states, they go elsewhere. They go elsewhere to other allied organizations, and we lose talent. What I would do is I would build pipelines with allied organizations to make sure that we're retaining youth, making sure that they're staying to fight and work in their communities, making sure that state parties, through a full needs assessment that I want to do with every state party and every territorial party, get a sense of what their needs are. And one of them, I can already tell you, is going to be rural organizers, making sure that they are there and making sure that they're consistent, because relationships are everything, and they need to be consistently there to maintain and cultivate those relationships. And that's how we get a sustainable model.
Thank you, Nate. Next up, Ben Wickler.
0 seconds. Having a commitment to full-time year-round staff to support the Rural Caucus, to support the Small Business Council, to make sure that we have representation in the vice chair roles and in senior leadership of the party with lived experience in these pieces, and that we're thinking about this as we're hiring and staffing out, and then working to ensure that state parties actually have the capacity to do this year-round, as we have in Wisconsin, but that in so many states is under-resourced because state parties have not had the resources that they need to do this work. That's an essential commitment from me as a DNC chair candidate, and it's something that we've lived out in Wisconsin. We know that when people come on for a couple months and then cycle off, it can actually breed more cynicism and resentment because it feels like tokenization. It doesn't feel like an authentic commitment. And that means that now and going forward for these next 4 years, if I'm the DNC chair, we're going to fund these roles and we're going to empower them with programmatic budgets to be able to do the work that builds trust and expands our coalition so that we can earn votes in every zip code across this country.
Great. Thank you, Ben. Marianne.
And when people have human relationship with political organizers, they're not always their favorite people. One of the things I've heard a lot from members is that they have received no training. Another thing is that a lot of people have the image of Democrats, which is very odd about money. First of all, we are an entrepreneurial nation. So if somebody is starting a small business, we want to be really clear. We're all for people making money. We just want righteous commerce. So we're against corporatism. We're against overreach by unfettered corporate forces that actually eat away at small businesses. But we want to read to people like, we're excited your business started. So if we have people in these states, they should be trained. People have told me they're desiring to be trained. There should be somebody who understands about farming. I meet so many young people now. It's like hip to be a farmer. You got it. You got the land. What are you going to plant? What are you going to do? There should be people who know about business. We should have people on staff who don't just show up at election time. They actually visit these businesses. How's it going? That understand about getting loans, understand about starting businesses. That should be part of the training for our staff, not just political activism training, but being out there with people in human relationships and where they live and what they're doing. That's the training that our people need.
Thank you, Marianne. Next up, Martin O'Malley.
Thank you. One of the things I've learned by turning around big organizations at every level, whether it's the city or the state, or most recently at Social Security, is that it's not enough to attract good people, that you have to retain good people. And you do that as a leader by being present and by creating a winnable game where people can see that they're actually getting things done. There's been a lot of talk in these forums about, will you fund a consistent person? It really can't just be one person. You have to have somebody backing them up because, to maintain those relationships. But very, very critically important is creating a winnable game. Really good people want to stay at an organization that's getting stuff done. So that's going to require a leader that's present, that's driving an agile process, and it's going to require dialing up the best leaders and giving them the sense that if they stay, they're going to accomplish great things.
Great. Thank you so much, Governor. Next up, Senator Skoufis.
Thanks so much. You want to keep employees. It starts by stopping the bad things that are happening that disrespects them on a cycle by cycle basis. We need to stop providing 1 to 2 day notice before laying off DNC staff. We need to stop laying off DNC staff disrespectfully via email. Some of the practices this past cycle were absolutely outrageous following November 5th. Second, yes, I think we're all saying the same thing. There should be dedicated full-time staff for the councils, for the caucuses. I take it a step further. You all should get line items in the budget at the DNC so that you all can do your own programming and outreach and activity. But 3, related to number 2, is, a lot of candidates here were playing Santa Claus the past couple of months, and you're going to get this, you're going to get this, you're going to get this. Unless you have an explanation as to how you're going to pay for these things, it's all smoke and mirrors. And I've been very clear, we're going to reorient our funding and our spending at the DNC away from the consultant class who's been ripping us off so that we can do these things for councils and caucuses that we're talking about.
Great. Thank you, Senator. Jason Paul.
So everyone wants to do amazing things. I agree with all of it. But to do most of it, we need an abundance mindset. To get an abundance mindset, we need to have a good relationship with our donors. People are talking about how we fund it. I'm the only one in this plan, in this race, who has proposed an actual change in how we go about doing our fundraising. If we can change how we go about doing our fundraising, then we can have the abundance to do all of the good things that we want to do. For me, it starts with my 10,000 organizers, but yes to council staff, yes to permanent staff, yes to having an ability to do all the great things we want to do. But that only comes if we can have abundance, and abundance only comes from respecting the people who are this party.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. And we have one, potentially 2 more questions. For our listeners, some of our candidates again might be heading off to join another forum. If they don't have a chance to say goodbye, I want them to all to know we appreciate them being here tonight. And we'll be following up with each of them with some other additional questions that were sent to us. So next question, local and county parties.
We can't hear you.
Kylie, you're muted.
Sorry, I don't know if it muted me the whole time here. So 1, potentially 2 more questions. We apologize for any candidates that have to leave. We understand if you have to sneak out to your next event here. Local and county parties, especially in rural and red areas, really struggle to recruit party officials and candidates. How will you and the DNC support recruitment and retention of diverse talent in these spaces? And do you think the DNC should have a focus on local races? And first up is Ken Martin.
Well, absolutely. You're hitting on 2 of my main points in my plan. First, of course, is a 3,244 county strategy. Unfortunately, a quarter of our counties around the country don't have any elected Democratic Party leadership, as you know, Kylie. And we have to organize everywhere. We know there's Democrats everywhere who want to organize everywhere, and we have to give them an outlet for that. And the national party needs to support state parties' efforts to recruit people to serve in those leadership roles so that we actually are standing up organization in every one of those 3,244 counties. Second, as it relates to contesting every race, I have been a fierce advocate for years now on making sure that we're contesting races up and down the ballot. We can't just be the party that's focused on federal races. Of course, we need to win back Congress, and of course, we need to win back the presidency, but we're losing too many public policy battles in these arenas, school boards, city councils, county boards, because we are indifferent to them. And the damage to this country has been immense. Look at how many school districts have been taken over over by the conservative movement, and they're banning books, they're whitewashing history, they're changing curriculum, and they're attacking our children. That's the result of not just Republicans and their orchestrated campaign, but it's the indifference by the Democratic Party in contesting those races. Compete in every county and every zip code, and compete up and down the ballot in every race.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Next up, Chairman Ben Wickler.
I agree. We have to build county parties everywhere. We have to have candidates everywhere. And what we've done in Wisconsin, and it's a program that we've drawn inspiration from other states, and I want to spread to other states, is that we don't just ask people to run, we support them. We have a year-round candidate services team at the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, where if you're a school board candidate, a candidate for mayor of your village, if you're somebody running for a county board seat, you can work with our team and we will help you write a campaign plan. We'll help you design literature. We'll help fund mail and digital ads for you. We have a budget every election cycle in spring and fall elections to work with candidates that are in races so small that they could easily be overlooked, where people have never had the opportunity to run a professional campaign before. And what's exciting is that when you work with folks running for those offices, you work with county parties to help make sure they're recruiting and supporting a diverse array of candidates, and then you work to provide that support to those candidates, those folks become your best validators. Those are the folks, the we of Democrats in every community who are saying, we Democrats believe in fighting for working people, in building up small businesses and representing every community. They're in the ads for the congressional candidates, for the candidates running for governor and lieutenant governor. They become representatives of the communities in which they thrive. So we do that work in Wisconsin at every level. We had candidates in every one of our state Senate races, 97 of 99 state assembly races this year, and hundreds of local offices that we work directly with. And we want to support that kind of work in housing, the work that sometimes goes to consultants in state parties across the country to help local candidates win.
Great. Thank you, Ben. Next up, Nate Snyder.
Great question. I think this really starts with looking back at how we raise money. I think we need to look at sustainable ways and methods on how we do that. And absolutely, we want to lower the threshold for those who are able to run and make sure that they do. The fact that focusing on local races is one of the reasons that I jumped into this race. Ken eloquently spoke about extremists. At the Department of Homeland Security, I focused on domestic terrorism. I focused on domestic violent extremists. I know how to fight them. I know how they recruit. And I know the hate, and I know the various other sort of divisiveness that they sowed in order to get the people and intimidate. And so I want to take the fight for them. But that is only possible if we focus at the local level. We are now seeing Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, 3%ers, and others who are working for these, running for, and potentially winning for these local races. I've had conversations with rural members here about them seeing that happen in their own backyard. We need to make sure that we win at that level, because if they get their foot in the door, we are going to see them ascend politically, and we are going to be dealing with them for years. So this is the front lines of where we need to compete at multiple levels, but especially the local level, because many times the local discourse that we hear can bubble up to become national very, very quickly. And this is on how information works now. I've had the opportunity to learn this environment. We need to equip for this environment, and I can't be more serious on focusing at the local level to make sure these folks don't win.
Thank you so much, Nate. Next up, Governor O'Malley.
I have done this, I've done this in my own state as governor, going to rural areas, recruiting good candidates. I've done it as a citizen when I was no longer governor. I'm thinking of Bill Kilby in Cecil County, the Burns Night Dinner that I did up there, and also Jared Shabline on the Eastern Shore and the candidates I campaigned for there. I also did this nationally with my own leadership effort called Win Back Your State from 2016 to 2018 that I mentioned earlier. As part of the first 100-day plan that I rolled out at the first caucus the other night, on day 2, I will announce a series of county chair town halls in every region of our country. And I believe that there's an enormous amount of energy pent up all across the nation of people that want to go out, recruit candidates, and actually run for office. That's what happened in 2016. And I don't believe that this party is dead. I believe there's still a lot of life in this donkey. And I believe that if we pull together the county chairs and empower them, charge them with the mission of recruiting candidates. You know, I was talking to Bill Gluba, former mayor in Davenport, Iowa. He said, you know what I would do if I were you? I'd take out newspaper ads in a lot of rural newspapers and say, hey, want a job? It pays this amount. You put the salary for the sheriff or the register of wills, and you say, put the phone number of the local Democratic Party chair and say, apply at the number below. I want to keep on talking until the Academy Award music comes up, because that's one of my favorite audience participation aspects of these forums. So if I talk for a few more minutes.
It won't. I changed it. That was my mistake. That it was on there in the
That's no
first place.
fun. That's no fun.
I will try to put it back on for you next time.
Oh
Devin.
man, send it to
Thank
me
you
on
so
my
much.
phone, would you?
Next up is James.
Thanks so much. Look, back in 1996, we won 52% of rural counties in the United States. 52%. Do you know how many we won this past election? 8% of rural counties. And one of the driving reasons I believe for that is, as we're talking about candidate recruitment, as we're talking about trying to win races in these tough rural areas, is people feel alone. Democrats feel alone, and there's no one out there to help them in these potential races. I'll give you a perfect example. Probably the only special election for the U.S. House that we have coming up several months from now that we have a snowball's chance in hell of actually flipping is the Elise Stefanik seat, which, by the way, used to be held by a Democrat not too long ago here in upstate New York. And there is one candidate who by far and away would be the strongest recruit in that race, an assemblyman by the name of Billy Jones, who comes from a Trump double-digit district. I served with him. He wins convincingly his reelection, sometimes goes unopposed every couple of years. And I texted him after he decided the other day that he was not going to run. And I said, did you hear from anyone at the DNC? And he said, no, I heard from a few folks every now and again, obviously from the DCCC, not a single phone call from the Democratic National Committee. And so as chair, I'm not just going to outsource this effort to recruit strong candidates to the campaign arms of the House and the Senate or some other folks. I'm going to be personally going out to those communities where we need to find the strongest candidate to win these Trump districts and recruiting them and letting them know it's not just going to be the campaign arm that's going to be there for you. The DNC, the whole national apparatus, is going to be there for you as well. People need to feel like someone's going to have their back if they decide to run.
Thank you, Senator. Next up, Marianne.
We need to find candidates, obviously, and we also need to find voters. It seems to me complete political malfeasance how little cohesion there has been in this party over the last few years. The Democratic National Committee has concentrated on federal elections, and it's, as other people have spoken here, nobody even talks to some county official. Nobody even talks to somebody who's working in some small town. Nobody even calls. I agree with those who say we will have town halls. We will have town halls because not only because people need to be heard, not only because people need to be seen, but because together, organically, we're going to build a new story for America. And we ourselves, with everybody on every staff level, every party person in every county, every city, every community, they're going to really look forward to these town halls. And I'm going to ask them, tell me about what happened this week. Tell me what's going on in the community. And they'll feel like somebody cares, and it will be a real community. We need to be a community. You know, one of the things about Republicans, they have a worldview, and you can feel it. Now, you and I find that worldview abhorrent, but people don't even know what the Democratic worldview is. They don't know that it's inclusion because we're not acting in an inclusive way. And that begins with us. It begins with those of us in the DNC. It begins with those of us who are Democrats, who are working wherever they are. And I will be someone that they will feel listens. And they will feel that they were heard. And they're going to be excited about these town hall meetings. And then this will be so rich. The soil will be so rich. Candidates will emerge from that. That will not be a problem. We're going to go out and be real in these communities. And out of that will emerge the next stage of our political power.
Thank you, Marianne. Next up, Jason Paul.
So I had the advantage of recently advising a local party. So I feel this local party thing really seriously. For me, it starts with my one staffer per county. If you have one staffer per county, it becomes a lot easier for the committee to have someone they say, oh, we want to do this. They have someone they can say, go do this, and then they'll do it. It also is to me about, if we don't have a committee there, start calling the people up who voted in all the primaries and say, look, you voted in a primary, you clearly care about this. The thing Ben Wickler had in Wisconsin, I will admit, sounds awesome. When we talk about candidate recruitment, which is the next piece people want, it can't just be, it's the right thing to do. And it can't just be, Governor O'Malley talked about, we'll run ads that say, this is what these salaries pay. But if you're running in a place that's really hard to win, you might not win. And so then you're not going to get that salary. We need to support people on both the front and the back end of being able to run for office, so that there's like, if I'm going to disrupt my life, the party is going to take care of me both on the front end and the back end of this process. If we do that, if we have that staffer, if we have that connection, that's how we make the local parties work again. I kind of was like a volunteer staffer almost for that local committee. And so we need to do this with the real resources. I think I'm about to be at time. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate that. And it's going to beat me off here with the timer. So, thank you so much to our participants who have been here. For most of the night, we had more than 200 on our Zoom webinar. Plus, this has been live streaming on a YouTube channel as well. And I imagine that there were many more people watching there. We're going to be doing a really brief closing statement. I'm going to share my screen for a quick minute and show the candidates an email that I received in response to an invitation. I know that you're not going to have a lot of time to read this, but we're going to, as a prompt to your closing statement, consider the feedback we unfortunately get from our listeners too often. Hopefully you can see that.
Yep, we can see it.
Thank you. And those of you who've been involved in party politics know that this is sometimes the response that you get. So
and just to read for our listeners who may not be able to see, if you could read the email,
thank
Kylie,
you, Deanna.
that would be great.
Yes, the email was from one of our email members, Carol. Why would I want to listen to a party that ignored my state when we needed them? No, thank you. You have ignored us for 20 plus years. You don't care about rural anywhere. You screwed us over and over. You don't care about we the people. All you want is what little bit of money we have. And I will say we edited this and removed some of the maybe not appropriate language. So you can imagine there was a little more emotion to this. So candidates, as you think about responding to our voters and supporters who are feeling this way in your closing, and again, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We will follow up with all of you via email and wish you luck with the next forums that you have. And our first response here is Marianne.
The issue we have here is that the DNC, can you hear me? Am I unmuted?
Yes.
The problem we have here is that the DNC needs to show some humility. The problem with that email is that in some ways it's true. The Democratic Party did ignore. Lyndon Johnson said we just lost the South for a generation after he signed the Civil Rights Act. He had no idea that we were just going to withdraw resources from the South and from other states where, yes, there was this invasion of Republicans. They didn't have to become super majorities. These people have not seen Democrats there. They haven't seen resources. The first thing I would do if I saw that email come across my desk, I try to get that person on the phone. I would email her. I would say, would you please allow me to have a phone call with you? She would be very surprised. People just want to be seen and heard. And in some cases, I think regarding these rural communities, I would be there to say, I'm sorry. A lot of what you're saying is true. We recognize it. We're doing everything we can. And we're going to prove to you that we are here now. And I'd love to hear from you, your thoughts about what we could do to win back your trust. It would mean a lot to me if you could tell me. And it's amazing how people's hearts change when you have the courtesy to apologize and to admit where you have been wrong, because you know what? The Democrats have made some real mistakes. And that woman's email had a lot of pain in it.
Yes.
That anger came from pain. They did feel ignored. And they were ignored by us. And I would say so, I would apologize. And not only would I ask her what we could do different, we would do it different. And she would see it and she would hear from me. And I might even go back to that neighborhood. People would hear about that because they would know that the head of the DNC had made a real human connection.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Next up is Chairman Ben Wickler.
Thanks so much. You know, the way that we build trust with people is to show them the respect of being honest. And if you look at our 57 state party strategy at the DNC now, it essentially is a $12,500 check, and in red states, it's $15,000. And that is not a plan to win elections. That is a monthly allowance that doesn't really have anything to say to folks that are in places that are deep red who are wondering whether the Democratic Party even understands or sees them at all. And what I'm offering in this race is a different way of thinking about this, not just negotiating how to divide up the pie, but by actually building a plan to win in each state. And I think this is a real contrast with other candidates in the race, that we should be honest about what is within the margin. If we push and push and push, is it state legislative races? Is it municipal races? What are the fights where we can show up, we can demonstrate our respect, and then build together so we build the trust so we can actually gain ground and win up ballot over time? That's what I'll do if I'm the DNC chair. That's what rural United States red areas deserve from a DNC, is that kind of partnership, honesty, realism, and a commitment to winning, because this is not a game.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Next up, Chairman Ken Martin.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. Thanks. Look, I'm an organizer for our state parties. I've campaigned in all 50 states, and in the last 2 years, I traveled to 40 states and knocked doors in all of the battleground states. I'm the only candidate in this race who can say that. And I don't just show up in the big cities. I've been in Bismarck, North Dakota, keynoting a dinner. I've been in Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania. I did a 17-county rural tour in Nevada. I door knocked in Sierra Vista, Arizona. I visited the border in Nogales. I keynoted a dinner in Brunswick, Georgia, and I door knocked in rural Nebraska, among many other things. I just plain show up. I created the Red State Fund, and we as a party need to show up in all communities. We need to have to understand people's concerns for themselves and their families, and we have to defer to community organizers on the ground instead of rich consultants in DC. Look, my friend Franklin Muir he was a founder of the Native American Caucus. He used to say that the sign of any good organizer is how much dust they've collected on the dirt roads. My boots have collected a lot of dust these last few years, and I'll collect a lot more as the next DNC chair with all of you. Show up in rural communities, not just say you support them. Actions speak louder than words. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being with us. Governor O'Malley. Oh, it's,
Am I on?
there we are. Yes,
Okay. I'm looking for my mute thing.
we
But
can
you
hear
hear
you.
me.
Yes.
I don't have to do it this time. What a joy. All right. There are a few things that get me as fired up and as excited as the notion of actually setting a national goal for our party of fielding candidates in every single legislative district of our country and across the ballot in the county courthouses and other important offices, including constitutional offices. It is a sad fact of the matter that the lead sponsors, state Republicans, who sponsored the legislation in Mississippi that led to Dobbs, sponsored the Texas legislation, sponsored the Ohio abortion ban, that not one of those three candidates was challenged by a Democratic nominee in their next election. We have to change that, and we can change that. I ask for your support, and I ask you to believe in a party that's truly national. And I offer you national leadership to bring us out of this darkness and into a new era of engagement all across the nation. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you so much, Governor, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Senator Skoufis.
Thanks so much, and thank you for tonight's forum. Look, we aren't going to win back rural America by handing out more lawn signs. We're going to win back rural America by rebuilding the trust that we've lost over the last number of decades. And I'll give you a short anecdote. In one of my towns I represent, there are 5 orchards the 5 families, as they're referred to. They meet for dinner every year, and after they sort of quasi-price collude and look around the table and tell everyone no one's raising their apple prices this year, right? They go on to talk about other things. And this past time, they talked about politics. These are all hardcore Republicans. I've shown up in every single one of their farms. I've worked with them. I've actually passed legislation for them that benefits their industry. And this year, the patriarch looked at the rest and said, you could have held a gun to my head over my 65 years on this planet, and I never would have pulled the lever for a Democrat. But you know what? I'm effing voting for James Skoufis this year because he heard us out. He showed up, not just for a photo op, and he did something to help us. It's about rebuilding trust. I did it. I do it every single day in my rural district, and I know that we can rebuild the brand with the national party as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Senator, and thanks for being with us. Jason Paul.
So the chair of the Putnam County, Indiana Democratic Party reached out to me. He's also a city councilor in that county in Indiana. And he wants my organizer, but he thinks we can't afford it. And I think we can't afford not to have it. It's our job to figure out how to get in that organizer and then more help. And that's how we show our commitment to showing up everywhere. And it's people like him and millions more. That's how we get Carol back. So it's nice to say, I'm the chairman of the DNC, and as chairman of the DNC, I'm going to be the one to personally get Carol back. But that's not a plan. A plan is if we empower the people who want to be this party, but feel under-resourced, underloved, and underappreciated, and we get them, someone to help them on the ground immediately, and then figure out the rest of the steps of help. One thing, people talked about here is it may be that giving some amount of allocations to people who are the party, $100 a week, $100 a month could go a long way just to make them feel loved. That's how we rebuild this party in rural America.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason. And last but certainly not least, Nate Snyder.
Great, thank you. Ken's quote at the end reminded me, and I wish we had the opportunity to talk about Indian country. That is one area where we saw massive losses, and it's something that needs to be addressed seriously. Going back to my national security experience and also having gone to the Naval War College and learning battle planning, there's an adage that we need to learn from our failures. And once we do learn from those failures, we need to own them. So I think we need to have that conversation. And in a matter of listening and speaking to this person in particular, I want to have a full, what we call a SWOT analysis done. It's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to be done with all state parties and all territorial parties as well. And I think we are going to find the biggest opportunity that's on the board is investing in rural organizing of rural communities. Rural communities know how to stretch a dollar. And also it's going to give us the biggest return on investment because every dollar that we spend there is going to get stretched to its max. Rural community organizing and things really aren't all that expensive. It's about prioritization. And like I said, the front lines are in rural communities. The front lines are at these local races. And it's imperative that we start winning there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nate. And to all of our candidates who joined us, a very sincere thank you for taking the time to join us and talk about issues involving rural America and our small businesses. We felt it was really important that we had the chance to have this conversation, and the substance that you brought to this conversation was very meaningful and very appreciated. I want to thank Annette and Mark and Andrew from the Small Business Council as well for your help in making this happen. To Deanna Zant, who has been my tech wizard between the two of us, we did our best to keep this running. I think we did pretty well. Super appreciate you. And to all of the volunteers from the Rural Council and the Small Business Council and all of those who are participating in this election. If you are a DNC member who is watching, I hope that you found something that was meaningful to you tonight. If you are not a member, I hope that you found something and will share it with the DNC members in your state and encourage them to listen to the candidates. This forum will be available on the DNC Rural Council YouTube channel. We will send that to all those who registered for the forum. We'll send that out so you can watch it at a later time. Again, many thanks for joining us. We appreciate you and we hope you enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you so much.